Recently on Cityline and elsewhere, we've been having conversations about the power of representation in the media. The Oscar-winning film Everything Everywhere All at Once and its actors were celebrated for Asian representation, not just for inclusion, but for the authentic portrayal of Asian families. Joining us today to talk about that is Dr. Phillipe Copeland. He's an associate professor at Boston University School of Social Work, and he's also a faculty lead for education and training at the Boston University Center for Anti-Racist Research. How are you today? Thank you for being here. So we're celebrating diversity in casting, but you believe that we should also be having a discussion on the portrayal of racism in pop culture. So tell us why.
Yeah, so pop culture doesn't just entertain. It also has the potential to educate or to miseducate. So we can really think of pop culture as another kind of a classroom, the classroom that actually most of us are enrolled in. Mm-hmm. And so what we see, what we hear, what we experience through popular culture really matters because it can shape our perceptions of ourselves, the world, and also our understanding of the problems that we need to solve, problems like racism.
Now, you have developed a test that can help us evaluate if a film or a TV show is anti-racist, some things that we should be looking out for. It's broken down into 3 questions. Racism is portrayed as a systemic issue. Mm-hmm. People of color are not reduced to stereotypes or victims, and white people are portrayed as working in solidarity with people of color. So explain the categories and the inspiration for the test and the motivation behind it.
Right, so it's a 3-item test, the first of which is about the way that racism is portrayed in terms of a problem. Mm-hmm. Often people believe that racism is just a matter of blatant acts by whites of bigotry, discrimination, or hatred. Sometimes racism looks like that. But sometimes it looks like policies or practices or belief systems that have similar effects to discrimination, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. They end up making life more difficult for the same groups of people who historically have been the targets of overt discrimination. An example that we could use right now are the many voter suppression laws that are going on throughout the country. If you look at the language of the laws, they don't say black people can't vote. What they do is they make it harder for black people to vote. Mm-hmm. And that's a good example of systemic racism. Mm-hmm. And so people need to see that kind of racism portrayed in popular culture so that they know it when they see it.
Okay, so we have some examples of some shows and films that you put to the test. We're going to start with The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's part of a Marvel series. Mm-hmm. Talk about this example that we're seeing.
Yeah, so one of the things that happens in the show is that Sam Wilson, otherwise known as the Falcon, mm-hmm. who's a Marvel superhero, his family is having some difficulty. He and his sister are having some difficulties with their family business, and they go and they try to secure a loan to help them to keep their business afloat. One of the things that happens, which happens in real life, is that they are denied the loan primarily for kind of red tape procedural kinds of issues. Mm-hmm. And this is in spite of the fact that the white person who works at the bank is a big fan of... So
why is that problematic, and maybe not just an effort by the writers to write something into the script that happens to black people, whether you're a superhero or not?
Oh, no. I mean, that isn't problematic. I would say that that's a good example of systemic racism, right? So we know that if you look at the research that blacks' experience of the banking system has all kinds of inequities, right? It's more difficult for us to get loans. We often get loans that are less desirable. And so one of the things that this show does really nicely is it shows an example of that when you're not expecting it in a superhero show. That's not what you're thinking they're going to talk about. And they bring that up very, very early. Okay.
Reservation Dogs, which is the first series to feature all indigenous writers and directors, and almost all the cast is indigenous. Explain this example for us.
Yeah, this is a great example of a show that really fully humanizes indigenous people. And so you get to see all the ugliness, the brutality, the despair of being survivors of settler colonialism, but it doesn't reduce them to that. So you get to see a community of people who love, who learn, who laugh, who are three-dimensional. And it really makes the point that there's a difference between being affected by racism and being defined by racism. This show does a great job of talking about racism without defining indigenous experience purely by racism.
Law enforcement dramas dominate the primetime lineup, portraying the urban police forces, the FBI, CIA, etc. Would you say that a majority of that genre of programming does not pass your test?
Yes, I would. And one of the reasons is that often in these kinds of shows, they don't really get at the systemic nature of police violence. There's a habit of making it seem, and this is what we hear in popular discourse, that it's about a few bad apples. And so they'll focus on sort of blatant bigotry by individual officers. And often that's not what systemic racism in policing looks like. And often some of the people who are, for example, engaged in police violence are not white people, right? They're black people, they're black officers, right? And so when you present the problem of racism in policing in a way that doesn't get at that broader systemic dynamic, it makes it harder for people to see the real nature of the problem, which is not about individual bigoted white police officers. It really is about the way that policing is done in the United States.
The last question, is the responsibility to produce anti-racist stories, does that fall on the shoulders of content creators or the consumer? And what can be done to move towards anti-racist content?
That's a great question. I think there's responsibility both by creators and consumers. I think consumers need to demand better stories, more anti-racist stories. I think that that will help to move the industry in that direction. I think that the content creators have an opportunity to tell better stories themselves, really from the beginning, from the process, well before anything is put out to the public, and really thinking about how are we portraying racism, how are we portraying the people who are the survivors, the targets, how are we portraying the people who are usually often the perpetrators. I think that needs to start at the beginning of the process.
All right, Dr. Copeland, an associate professor at Boston University School of Social Work, thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here today.